Welcome to Extra Takes, hosted by Northland Church Senior Pastor Dr. Joshua Laxton. Join us each week as Pastor Josh reveals the rest of the story behind his sermons. We'll discuss how those who follow Christ can live out a biblical vision for the church in our world today.
Well, hello, Northland family and friends. Welcome to another episode of Extra Takes. I am your host, Matt Shiles, with my co-host, Pastor Josh Laxton.
Matthew,
Here, you're live.
I guess I'm still virtual.
Yeah, but you're in
I'm
your house.
live from my home.
You're not in bed.
I'm not in bed, but I did stay in bed Sunday.
So for those that were here Saturday, they may not know, but you preached on Saturday, and Sunday you were laid out. So we actually got to experience what our online worshipers experience.
Yeah, and I guess that's the second time.
I believe so.
Yeah. So
yeah.
But anywho, I'm glad for technology. I went home Saturday, and I'm like, man, when I went there Saturday, I didn't feel awesome, so I didn't even hang out in the lobby because I'm like, well, I'm just gonna hang out in the back, but yeah, and so after I preached, I'm like, man, so I went home, ate, and went to bed, and I woke up, and man, yes, it was not good. And so again, I'm grateful for Saturday, and I'm grateful that we had the message recorded. If push came to shove and I had to come, people would say, don't do that. And I'm glad that they would. We have, people that could fill in on a dime, but on a drop of a dime. But since we already had the message recorded, go ahead and do that and keep it going. And so, but I feel much better. I'm like 85. I'm at 85%, kind of recovered, and still trying to rest. Because we're supposed to go to Ireland tomorrow.
Yes, we'll be leaving. Today's Monday. We're leaving for Ireland on Tuesday.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. We'll be there all week.
Lord willing, I will be heading out there with everyone. You, Pastor Gus, and then Randy Mixon, who's a governing elder, and it's really because of he and his wife Rhonda that we have found out about this church and exploring what does a partnership look like there on the island of Ireland.
You going to do that there?
Probably not.
Okay.
Probably not.
Oh, so yeah, we're excited for this trip. We may do some sort of special extra takes while we're there. We'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see what happens. But let's dig into this week. This was February 27th and 28th, and this was the first week when we were back in Genesis. Last year we were in Genesis 1 through 11, Genesis making sense of life, and now we're back in Genesis 12, and this is making sense of mission. Let's talk about that a little bit, but let me give us this outline. You started by asking this question about if I said what is the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, how would you define it? And then you gave us your definition, and then you dug into these 4 ways that God carries out his mission through his people. So the first way is the calling and commissioning of mission. That's Genesis 12, 1 through 3. Second way is the covenant of mission, and that's Genesis 15. Third way is the confirmation and cost of mission. This is Pastor Gus's favorite on circumcision, Genesis 17. And then finally, we finish with the cultivation of mission. So let's start by just talking about this Genesis making sense of life, Genesis making sense of mission. How did that tagline kind of come about, those 2 taglines?
Well, I would say when you're reading the first few chapters of Genesis, I definitely see God's mission there. It's embedded in creation, that he is on mission to create a people for himself. We talk through that, but that's really helping people make sense of life. and you're answering, these big questions. Where did the world come from? Why is there 7 days? What really is the role and the purpose of a human beings? So that's where I would say, hey, let's make sense of life. Okay, now that you've uncovered kind of this idea of what life is all about, and you get to Genesis 11 and then 12, there really now is this unveiling that God is now he's really going to have to redeem a people that's actually going to go after all peoples. And I didn't spend a lot of time because I've preached on that a lot, since I've been here. So I wanted to take a different approach to it, and without even getting bogged down. Like, here's the thing. I mean, I could have really, not necessarily just dug into the trenches and kind of really went into this microscopic understanding of each one of these chapters. I really wanted to take the approach of giving the big buckets of what we really see, so that we understand what's going on versus getting lost in the weeds. And again, not saying that the weeds aren't important. I mean, there's some principles. Like you could take some principles away from Lot, and him wanting the greener grass. I mean, like, sure, there are life lessons, but when you're looking at what I'm trying to really let us see throughout, is I want to make sense of mission, because Abraham is like the poster child of faith. He is the father of the Jewish race, but he's also the father of the church. So Paul's going to look, in Galatians and even in Romans, he's going to look back and go, man, there's the poster child of faith. There's the man that God gave the gospel to first. And so, but then you can also even say that Abraham is really, Muslims would actually say he's the father of their faith, because he is the father of Ishmael, who we'll actually see next week. But yeah, I mean, so that's why I chose that subtitle, is making sense of mission. And then next year, when we finish Genesis with Joseph, it probably will be making sense of suffering. And I do think that they all go hand in hand: making sense of life, making sense of mission, and making sense of suffering, and that they all culminate in Jesus. So that he's the better Adam, he's the fulfillment of Abraham, and he's the better Joseph, in the sense of, in his suffering, what was meant for evil turned out for the world's good. So
Yeah.
you like how I got that all planned out, and through 2027.
I do like that.
So, but yeah, so that's kind of the trajectory of it.
Awesome. So let's look at one word to describe this week. What's one word?
Well, I'm trying to think of the word. I don't even know if I can think of the word. He's going to make it happen. I mean, like, I don't, what's a good word for that? He's just going to make it happen. Unstoppable, probably.
Yeah, interesting.
Which, I mean, and it was just so hard to I try to teach this week. I mean, so this is where series, some people will kind of look back now. I really like Breakthrough because it was personally applicable. Then you get to a sermon series like this, and sure, some things will be applicable, but now you're really looking at the story of Scripture. And what you're having to do is, you got to find yourself in the story,
Right.
and part of you finding yourself in the story is really understanding Scripture. And so, I mean, this was really heavy teaching. This was some heavy stuff that I was trying to, and I'm like, even in preaching, and I'm like, man, I'm digging this because I know how important, and just like how weighty it is. I just don't know if it comes across as that, because I mean, these things are so important, that God is going to fulfill his mission regardless of what Abraham does.
Well, you talk about the weightiness. I mean, this was a semester's worth of content.
Yeah, probably. And I did it in 43 minutes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was, it was a lot. I mean, you could
It
have spent, I mean, this is the thing. You could have spent, a week on each one of the points,
oh yeah.
at least.
Oh yeah. I mean, absolutely. Even
That
just
wasn't, but again, that wasn't the
that
goal.
wasn't the
Was
point.
to
Right.
see it all together because, and I wanted people to see it within the first 25 years of Abraham's life because God is unveiling himself to Abraham. God just doesn't dump
Yeah.
all this on him, which is the reason why I ended with the cultivation part. Is that man, God is letting Abraham grow into this of the calling and the commissioning, understanding covenant, confirming the covenant. Hey, here's what I'm asking from. This is what I'm asking for from you. It's
Mm,
it's a sign that you've confirmed the covenant, just like
mm,
here's my sign that I confirmed the covenant I entered in with Jonas, the ring.
yeah.
Uh, so so Abraham doesn't have to do anything other than
Mm,
here when I say here's the sign. So the sign is just an outward symbol that he has entered into this covenant. But God's like, man, like this covenant, I'm gonna fulfill it. Like I'm just gonna use you. You're the vessel. You're the vehicle. I'm gonna drive. But I'm
yeah.
the driver. I'm the driver. I'm not a co-pilot. I'm
Mm,
going to tell you, I'm driving the vehicle. You're the vehicle, but I'm driving the vehicle. So if you break down, I'm going to fix you up. If you run a gas, I'm going to put gas in it. Like you are the vehicle, and so all I'm asking for is the cost of you got to have some
mm,
skin in the game, and and then the cultivation is that I wanted to see, and I had some slides too, like a roller coaster slide of like you might feel like this is your life, and then if you're watching this on video, I'm moving my hands all the way around, where you get very upside down. You get you can get nauseous because your life's not going in a straight line. Well, I mean, early for 25
yeah.
years that was Abraham. Now, what we do
Mm,
see afterwards is that he begins to iron it out some,
mm,
and then I have the slide of where there's this nice, beautiful road along the west coast where you have the mountains on the left and the ocean on the right. But here's the thing: it's when you're following the Lord, there is beauty, but there is
mm,
also danger. And so, but if you're following him, on the calling, the commission, the covenant, like the cultivation of that is that
yeah.
yes, there's danger and there's beauty, but there is stability.
Yeah. Those pictures were in the Bible app notes
Okay,
at,
good. So I
at
just,
the end. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, so I think it's a good point when you talked about although there was a lot and although these could have been separated into several weeks, the purpose that you combined them for is because you really wanted to see everything together. Right. And it reminds me of, as I've been in seminary, taking my master's level courses, we'll have books that are assigned to us and just in these last couple classes, my professors have been doing a good job of at the beginning of the semester, they'll lay out the purpose of how they actually want us to read each of the books. And some of the books are actually meant to, because we'll be assigned, 5 books in a semester, and some of the books are actually meant to be read for the big picture. And they'll even tell us that, like, don't get bogged down on the small little details, right? You can read this at a moderate pace, or you can read this at a fast pace, or you can read this at or no, or this is the main book where we're going to really be getting into the details. That's kind of what it feels like a message like this, where you're saying, hey, we're giving a lot of information, but based on the amount of information that you cover, we have to recognize that we're going to be getting it at a higher level. And that's actually the point, right? You cover something that much, you can't get into the finer details in 45 minutes, but that's not the purpose.
yeah, and which and we really did cover Genesis to Revelation in a lot of these points because I wanted to show the continuation of it, that the
Yeah.
calling, commission,
Mm,
commissioning, covenant, confirmation, cost, and cultivation. I mean, they're all in the New Testament.
Hmm.
Jesus is just the fulfillment of it. And so
Yeah.
Jesus is the fulfillment, and the church now is the vehicle
Mm.
by which God is accomplishing his mission. And that's where, like, in all of this talk, even about it, kind of Israel, is there a future for Israel? I mean, Paul seems to think that there is and this is my understanding, Paul seems to think that there is a future for ethnic Israel, not
Mm.
necessarily national, geopolitical Israel. And they're two different, they're not one and the same. They're two different, things.
Yeah.
But the vehicle. So again, when you're looking at what God's doing with Abraham, he is the vehicle by which he's going to accomplish this global mission of blessing all families of the earth.
Mm.
In the New Testament, the vehicle is the church, and
Mm.
there is no denying that.
Mm.
And so this is why it was so important just to see, what's going on with Abraham. And once again, that I'd like just to note that God created a people basically not necessarily out of thin air, but I mean, he takes Abraham and he actually redeems a people. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they are the now Hebrew race, which will come into being kind of Israel as a nation.
Well, and that takes us to that first point of the calling and commissioning of mission. And you had said, quote, no nation has as their mission statement that they are to live as a blessing to all the nations of the earth. I mean, I think that's a fascinating point to really set as a distinction what God is doing versus the reality of, man-made, man-created, nationalistic countries and borders and all of that. There's really a real clear distinction there of no nation has as their mission statement that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of one. I mean, I've done an undergrad, a postgrad, a doctorate. Um, I've never come across history where a nation has existed for other nations. And see, and that's where when you look at the Old Testament, Israel completely botched their mission. They did not live as a light to the nations. They didn't have the nations on their heart. They became very self-centered. They became very insulated. They rejected God, rebelled. They had the roller coaster ride because they could not get life right under God's rule and reign. I mean, so they did not even live up to
Right?
the mission that God wanted for his people. Uh, so yeah, I mean, America. I mean, well, we're always looking out for our own self interest. I mean, we can sit here and say. I mean, here's the thing: we can sit here and say. I mean, I think this is where this is more when I say geopolitical. This is more political statement. But I think this is part of who we go to war with. Why are we really going to war? Is is it really for our self protection, or is it really for the freedom of our kind of the Iranians? I mean, because ultimately, I would say we want to protect our own. So, I mean, what I'm hearing, and again, I'm not saying I'm for it or against it. I'm just saying, like, why we do things. Why does why do a lot of nations stay out of conflict? It's for their own self protection because they know they get waylaid. I mean, so. Uh,
Mm.
yeah, I mean, so this is where I'm like nations, and this is where God's kingdom is counterintuitive and counterculture
Mm.
of all other nations. All other nations are self-driven. We are selfless driven.
Mm.
And even from a place of weakness, we're strong because we got the sovereign, omnipotent, omniscient King who is
Mm.
actually working in and through us. Which you do see that early on in Israel is that they're not winning because they're so strong and mighty and because they've been spending 400 years getting
Mm.
ready for battle. They've never been in battle before, but they beat the Amalekites. They wage conquest, wage war, and go through the conquest in the Promised Land. But because of their rebellion, they only really drive out probably 10, maybe 20% of the inhabitants. I mean,
Right.
because they're.
Mm.
I mean, so, but the whole reason why they're winning is because God's doing it for them. And so yeah, like This is about
Mm.
what we were looking at this past week was so important when it comes to making sense of mission.
Yeah, it's timely. All right, so the second point about the covenant of mission. Question I had for you. You talked about the five major covenants. That did not include Adam. What's the philosophy there of not including Adam in a major covenant?
Yeah, so the reason why I don't include him, I mean, here's the thing. I don't necessarily have a dog in the fight one way or the other. I mean, if you wanted to include him, you can.
Sure.
One of the things that I would actually what theologians who would not put him on the list, which I didn't put him on the list for this one reason, where's the cutting of the covenant?
Oh, so that's the differentiator for you, is the
Yeah,
cutting?
is the cutting. Now you
Okay.
could say the cutting of the covenant was him and Eve, and they knew one another. There's a cutting there.
Is there what
But
about the
that's more of a
clothing?
marital covenant. What's that?
What about him clothing them?
Well, so
You,
that,
you
but
have the
that
sacrifice.
wasn't. I mean, so that's not the beginning. You know what I'm saying? That's not Genesis 1 and 2. Um,
Right, that's as a result of their sin.
Yeah, and there's no stipulations either. So where so again,
Mm.
when you have a covenant, so those two covenants is the really the Caesarean vassal and the
Hmm.
royal grant. Those two, particularly when God's entering into, so like the Mosaic covenant is a suzerain vassal one,
Hmm.
it's conditional.
Hmm.
The Abrahamic Noahic, that's the royal grant. You don't have you have nothing that kind of outlines either stipulations or what God's going to do with Adam. So
Got it.
that's that. So that's the reason why I don't and others don't include it. I mean, obviously, Jesus is the better Adam, but
Mm.
also the New Testament doesn't necessarily refer back to the Edenic covenant either. Now, it refers to the Sinai covenant, the
Hmm.
Mosaic covenant. You see that in the book of Hebrews. So that's where, like, I'm not going to, kind of inject what I think could be when it's
Hmm.
not that clear, and it doesn't make or break the argument.
What I think is interesting about that is for most people, it's not whether they know about this this debate or not, it doesn't necessarily matter. I just thought we hadn't talked about this before, but I don't know a lot about it, but I know enough about it to know that you would have had a clear, thought out answer of why you didn't include
Okay.
that covenant, right? So, and that's important for us as listeners to know that, like, when you say five, and someone may Google, oh, there's six covenants. Well, he just missed one. Well, no, that's intentional. And I just think it's fascinating in crafting a message, especially a message that has so much here. I mean, obviously you're a student of mission and you have studied this over and over and over and over again in all these different ways. But yeah, I thought that would just be a fascinating thing to
Yeah,
talk
I
about.
mean, well, and some even break down, some even break down the Edemic covenant into two, like
Mm.
the pre-fall, then the post-fall.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But again, like I just don't see that as a covenant.
Mhm.
Now you do have, like, even in the pre-fall, hey, as long as you don't eat from this one tree, you will enjoy. Like, I mean, you will be fruitful and you'll multiply. So, but it's just not enough there from an antiquity standpoint of when you look at the elements of a covenant. There's just not enough to go on there.
Yeah, awesome. So that is the second one. That's the covenant of mission. Um, Man, I loved you looking at the different types of kinds of covenants, the parity treaty, the suzerain vassal, and the royal grant. And I think there's just such richness there. I remember studying that in my Old Testament class. But the unequal nature, the equal party, unequal party, conditional, unconditional, And then where we see those, I think there's just a lot of richness there that helps us understand um, the context in which what's going on.
And just once again, one of the reasons why this is really important. Okay, so take the suzerain vassal treaty. That's a conditional covenant. That's
Hmm.
what God entered into with Israel in
Hmm.
Exodus. And he's like, if you obey me, you will
Yeah.
enjoy long life in the land. And then he issues out blessings and curses. You see that in, I believe it's Deuteronomy 28, 29, I think, something
Mm.
like that. So he's telling them, and in some sense, he's already projected, you're not going to obey me. I mean, so he already projected that out. Because he was and not that God was setting them up, but he was in some sense setting them up so that they would reveal, so it would be revealed
Mm.
that they needed a new heart. That's the whole idea, even the new
Mm.
covenant, Jeremiah 31, Ezekiel 36, that that we as human beings,
Mm.
even if we enter into a covenant with God and we don't have a new heart, we are going to wander away from God.
Yeah.
But the reason why that's important, because again, this is where, I mean, like, if we don't know your Bible, and you know enough just to be dangerous, or you went to church and you basically, sat under somebody who loved the Bible but was ignorant about the Bible, because that can happen
Mm.
too, then
Mm.
you can create some really poor theology. And this is where I would say, like, the whole idea of geopolitical Israel is one of those around the land. Whose land is it? Here's what I can promise you: it's not Israel's land
Mm.
from a covenantal standpoint, from a biblical standpoint. I'll stand on this all day long. It's not Israel, because God said, "I will give you this land
Mm.
if you obey me." Okay,
Mm.
so
Yeah.
so really the question around whose land is it? It isn't Israel's. It isn't Palestine's. Guess whose land it is? It's God's. God God can give whoever He wants to the land.
Mm.
But when it comes to Israel, the whole land covenant was around stipulations.
Mm.
They didn't live up to the stipulations, which is why they got
Mm.
kicked out of the land. And here's my question today. This is what I keep going back to today. Uh, what about Israel as a geopolitical nation obeys the king?
Yeah.
Crickets. I mean, they
Yeah.
don't. So don't sit there and tell me.
Mm.
And again, and this is why it's so important to know your Bible.
Yeah.
And not just know what somebody told you,
Mm.
because you went to a church who the pastor loved Jesus and really honored the word. But this is what happens when you don't really understand the word, is that you can create some really poor theology, and it can have disastrous consequences within our understanding of what God's doing in the world. And that's even, like, I saw some pastors, this past week, preaching on what's happening in Iran right now. I actually think that's terrible.
Yeah. Why?
I think
Why?
if you're trying to find if you're trying to any conflict over there, in the Middle East or with Russia or whoever, if you're trying to find, some kind of eschatological, like, golden nugget over every conflict, like that's not. I just don't think that's good stewardship of theology. I just don't, because we don't know. Jesus said in Acts chapter 1, you don't know the time or the seasons
Yeah.
that the
So this I.
Father has fixed. So what did He tell us to do? He said, get busy. He said, get busy being a witness in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the
Yeah.
uttermost
Yeah.
parts of the world. But undoubtedly, some people forget that part. I mean, because, Paul, I mean, here's the thing. If Paul, greatest, missionary Christian statesman, wrote most of the Bible, if he's not looking at the conflict, then why in the world should we be, like, taking every little conflict that's happening and looking under it? Is this, it's kind of like, but listen, Paul didn't do that. Even the disciples asking Jesus, hey, when are you going to restore? And Jesus, like, it's not for you to know, but here's what you do need to know. And
Mm.
so, yeah, here's what we know. We're one day closer to Jesus coming back. That's what I would say. We're one day closer. We're one day closer to either dying and being with Jesus, or one day closer for Jesus coming back. And so this is part of where, like, it doesn't mean that I don't like looking at that stuff. But I mean, I've seen some prominent guys. I mean, it's like they make their living off of this stuff. And I actually think, hey, if Paul didn't make his living off of that, I don't think we ought to be making our living off of that. Just my 2 cents. My extra takes.
Man, I didn't know I would pull that out of you. I don't even know how that came out. Good
Well,
job.
you're talking about the covenants, which is so
Well, and that is honestly, because you really connected it to that idea of conditional, unconditional, and that's where the Sinai covenant being conditional is so very important. Understanding the difference between what he did with the royal grant covenants of them being unconditional, with the new covenant, Abrahamic, Davidic, Noahic, but then how the Mosaic covenant is different. So yeah, so that was number 2. Let's look at number 3, the confirmation and the cost. Let's see.
I will just, I mean, I will stress one big thing about that covenant, the royal grant covenant. And
Okay.
the new covenant is a royal grant covenant.
Yeah.
God's going to make it happen. God's going to make it happen. So, like,
Well, that's the unconditional nature of it.
That's God's going to make it happen. So he's going to work through your doubt. He's going to work through your unfaithfulness. He's going to work through your faithfulness. He's going to work it out. That's the thing about the church. Hey, listen.
Yeah.
God's going to accomplish his mission with or without you. Like, I mean, so it was just so and the cool thing is too, when you look at all those covenants and you put them together, I thought it was pretty cool though. You got a world to live in, you got a people and a purpose to belong to, you got ethics, and then you got a king that keeps you keeps you grounded. And so the new covenant incorporates all of them under the new covenant.
Yeah.
So, anywho, all right.
Awesome.
But now moving on to confirmation and cost. So,
yeah, so you talked about this idea of circumcision, and then with the new covenant, when we put our faith in Jesus, the confirmation and the cost, and you talked about them. So for the new name, this idea of adoption, you drew a distinction between image bearers and also children of God. So image bearers being everybody, children of God being followers of Jesus. Why is that important to have that distinction in our mind?
Because there's a lot of people that don't draw that distinction.
Well, what are the implications of that?
Well, if you say that everybody's a child of God, that's universalism. Where you say, well, everybody's a child of God, everybody's going to go to heaven when they die. And that's not true. That's not true according to the Bible. So we see in John 1 where Jesus came to that which was his, own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision or husband's will, but born of God. Okay, so John's telling you right out of the gate, listen, not everybody is a children or a child of God. Only those who have been adopted, those who have believed in Jesus as Savior, as King, only those are the ones who have been given the right to be called children of God. So not everybody has that right. So, this is what Paul, is even talking about in Romans about right. Like, so if you are, he also talks about this in Galatians when it comes to Abraham and Isaac and Ishmael. So Ishmael is not a child of the promise, but Isaac is a child of the promise, and so he is the heir to the covenant, not Ishmael. And so therefore, if he's not an heir to the covenant, he has no right to the covenant. So that's the thing. If you are not part of this covenant, you actually have no right to what's in the covenant. And so this is where, when you look at what's in the covenant, here's what's in the covenant. God is creating he's redeeming a people from all peoples. And so, and if you're not in Abraham, if you're not in the family of Abraham, you do not have any rights to this covenant. So what do you have rights to? Well, if you are outside the covenant, based on the Bible, if you're outside the covenant, you have rights to hell. You have rights to judgment and wrath. That's what you have rights to. And so that's how, I mean, that's how it works.
Oh.
Far as the adoption, the new name, and the belonging, right?
Yeah, I mean that's important, and that's why I wanted to get into it a bit, because something that you've taught us is that defining terms matter, and those get thrown out interchangeably.
Yeah, they do. So, and they're not interchangeable. They're not synonyms either.
Yeah.
I will say, so this was interesting. So circumcision wasn't only practiced by Abraham.
Yeah.
It was practiced by other groups, in that day. So I'm not saying that this conversation ever happened, but it could have happened where, hey, you practice circumcision. Why do you practice circumcision? Oh, it's a puberty right. Oh, we're just trying to be healthy because we found out, blah, 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 blah. Well, why do you get circumcised? Well, we get circumcised because there was a God who contacted our patriarch of the family line and gave us this as a sign of belonging, that we belong to him. So anytime that we do it, it's a sign of belonging, that we belong to him. So and that's that's kind of the thing. So when you're talking about your name, like, who are you? Your identity. I am a child of the King. Like, that's my identity, and I'm going to tell you, that's the different identity than any identity that the world would have. There might be people in the world like, my identity is I'm a Laxton, and the Laxton is a strong name, or I'm a dentist, or I'm a teacher, or I'm a millionaire, or I'm a success, and so we have this identity, and so we all love identity. But when we're talking about identity, our identity, if there is a confirmation cost, our identity is that we no longer have our old identity. We actually have a new identity. Ours is a child of the King. And so again, everybody has identity, but ours is special and unique, and it's personal.
Well said. Well said. So that's third, that's the confirmation and the cost of mission. Now let's look at that fourth, the cultivation of mission.
I will say this, because again, I didn't get to, it was still 43 minutes. And so I still usually had like another 10 minutes to go. But
so you got more.
like the circumcision of the heart, so it's cutting off of sin. So what does Jesus tell his followers to do? If anyone's willing to come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. Paul also talks about this in Galatians chapter 2, for we are crucified with Christ. Okay. So the circumcision of the heart is really a denying and a killing. It's a cutting off of our former self, of our sinful flesh. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't struggle with it. But what you are doing is that you're confirming the cost of the covenant, and you're like, I'm not my own. I've been bought with a price that's not my own, and so therefore I am dying to myself, and I'm now living for Christ. Now the cool thing is that Christ isn't asking you or me to live on our own, because that's where He's given us the seal of the Spirit. So so that's where the Spirit of God comes in us and on us to empower us to actually live for Christ. This is part of the reason why. Like, how do you know? How do you know if you're part of the covenant? Like, so basically, here's another way of saying it. How do I know if I'm saved? Well, what does Paul say in Philippians? In Philippians chapter 1, that he who began a good work in you will carry it out until the day of completion. Now, and so here's how you know, like, that you've confirmed that you've had this. I mean, like, you have this now desire. It doesn't mean you're going to hit it perfectly. It doesn't mean you're going to hit a 10 out of 10. I mean, Abraham did not hit a 10 out of 10. But you have this desire to continue to learn. You have this desire, because what happened? You entered the cost. You entered the cost. Like, so this is why God's not asking. He's not asking for some, for some religious mumbo jumbo.
Yeah.
He's not asking for that. He's asking, are you in? Are you in? Like, because if you're in, I'm going to do it. Like, if you're in, like, but you can't have you can't have 1 foot in Ur, or 1 foot in Haran, and 1 foot, 1 foot in the kingdom. Like, you can't, like that. You're not in.
Right.
So are you in? So that's what he's after. That's why I feel like the confirmation and the cost is really important, is that it's not a faith by works. It's a faith that goes to work. And then you actually see that even more clearly on the cultivation side, is that Abraham he has been circumcised, so he's part of the covenant, because he goes all in. The cultivation side is, once again, like another way that you can confirm that you're in the covenant. Again, works does not save you. Works just reveals that you're part of the redeemed, that you're part of the saved, you're part of the covenant.
Yeah, I like how you said, not faith by works, but your faith goes to work. And yeah, that leads us well into that fourth point, the cultivation of mission. This is where you brought back the faith framework, and you gave us these charts of exercising faith versus exhibiting or living in fear. And this is where you ended up, and I think this is going to kind of continue into your message this next week. But you asking this question, how do you grow in exercising faith versus exhibiting fear? And it's this whole idea of cultivation. So you learn God's nature, then there's these characteristics, attributes, and then through. So you learn God's nature, he's eternal, his characteristics or attributes are life-giving, and that's through education. And then all the way down, supernatural, transcendent, infinite, omnipotent, omniscience, holy. So if a listener out there is interested in this cultivation and recognizes maybe this is an area that's been lacking in their life, what would you suggest? How might they go about learning from or tackling a list like this one that you gave us, this chart?
Yeah. So the encouragement that I would give, or the suggestion I would give, would be create a growth plan. So if you're going to get healthy, how are you going to get healthy? You got to have a plan.
Yeah.
Get healthy. I'm going to start eating this. I'm going to start, watching this. I'm going to start by walking. I'm going to incrementally. Yeah, I got to have a plan. So again, I would say kind of go into your plan. Now, here's what I did do. Here's what I did do. And this is why the faith framework is really important. Is that when you call it, like, God changed Abraham's worldview. See, I've talked through that, so I didn't feel like I needed to do, in some sense,
right.
I mentioned it in passing.
Yeah.
But God was completely reorienting Abraham's worldview. God was completely reorienting mission. Is that you're going to live for others now. And we're going to actually see that demonstrated with Sodom and Gomorrah. So this is going to be pretty cool. Ethics, new ethics. Maturity. Okay, so that's where the maturity is. Like, these are practices to mature. And so you're going to be educated. Well, okay, so now in Abraham's life, a lot of, or Abraham's time, education, they didn't go to schools. The family educated them. And so the family was really the discipler. Okay, so this is where, if you have kids, how are you educating your kids? And then also, how are you supplementing discipleship? So this is where church plays a huge role, because church really is the community in which you're going to be educated,
Yeah.
into your faith. So that's where, like, and because we're living in the society that we're living, this is where I would say you need to find a local church that you trust, because not all churches are created equal. And not everybody you see on TikTok is going to give you everything that is, like, they might have a different. Again, I'm not saying don't listen on TikTok or don't learn from other, but this is where I'm like, find you a local church that you truly believe. That, man, they've studied, doesn't mean that they're perfect, but man, if they're going to say something, they've done all of the homework that they could have done to make sure they're giving me a theologically correct Bible information. So but and then experience, you're going to learn through experience, because I mean, I think that was probably a big lesson for Abraham. He's learning through experience. Knowledge, you get some information, but knowledge is different than understanding. You get knowledge, understanding is actually how to apply that knowledge. Wisdom is godly living. All right, well, like, what is wisdom? Wisdom is it helps you, like, in the gray areas. Like, you may not know what to do. What do I do here? Do I, which direction? It's too big for Lot and me. So wisdom would say, but part of wisdom would say, okay, I know that God is gracious, so how can I be gracious to Lot? Hey, Lot, let me ask you. Hey, it's too big for us. Like, your livestock, my livestock. Hey, I tell you what. Where would you like to go? And I'll go to the other place. That's wisdom. Okay, so at least in God's economy. Prayer, silence, solitude, getting away. So community, like, I mean, so those are things where I'm saying, like, have a plan of how you're going to grow. This is where having your own Bible study is huge, or just reading the Bible for yourself is huge. If you've never done that before, you might want what we call a study Bible. You can find that in our bookstore. But it gives you footnotes that helps you kind of understand maybe what a passage that you don't understand means. But you're just going to keep on. And that was the whole point about Abraham, is he didn't come out of the gate just knocking it out of the park.
Right.
And that's where I wanted us to feel at least a little bit of a relief, knowing that we don't have to be perfect. No, God's not asking you to be perfect. He's asking you to be faithful. And sure, there will be times where we miss the mark and we're unfaithful, but part of being faithful is bouncing back. That's what we see with Abraham. He's constantly bouncing back. He's learning, he's growing, he's maturing. And again, I wanted to see the first 25 years before, Isaac comes along, because I do think that we start seeing maturity, like true maturity in him, around chapter 18, 19, obviously 22, and so forth. I mean, like, he's not hesitating in chapter 22. We'll be in chapter 22 for Easter. And if you don't know, that's him sacrificing Isaac. I mean, he is not hesitating one bit, which is unbelievable. I can't even tell you how unbelievable that is. He's hesitated the first 25 years. That's all he's done is hesitate. Right. But he doesn't hesitate in Genesis 22 around the promise. So that's what I would say. Just find, write a plan. It doesn't have to be a detailed plan, but I'm going to read my Bible daily. I'm going to go to church weekly. I'm going to find somebody who knows a little bit more than me, and then I'm just going to incrementally grow.
Yeah, amen. All right, well said. Then that's a great place for us to end for today. Any other final thoughts?
No, can't wait till next weekend. Be on Genesis 16, and then we have another preview. Monday night service that, Lord willing, I will be there in person. So can't wait.
Well, Northland family friends, thank you for joining us for another episode of Extra Takes. It's always a joy to have you join us, and we know that there's so many of you that are faithfully listening and learning and putting this into practice every single week. So it's a joy to do this alongside you every week. Until next time, blessings. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Extra Takes. Be sure to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts so you won't miss a single episode.